There's people in the world who are content to be average, and average people serve a purpose, that they have value to all of us. There's people who want to be great. They want to be exceptional, and they do great things. But there's a handful of people in the world who truly want to be elite. And to be elite, you have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed with whatever that goal is, that target is. And that obsession is a double-edged sword. That obsession that we have takes us to great heights, but there's a price to pay for it. That obsession in my life, like around my family, I was physically present much of the time, but I wasn't emotionally or intellectually connected. My brain was somewhere else chasing this elite level. And in trying to be elite, I cheated my family by not giving them that same level of focus.
Welcome to The Weight We Carry. It's a change of pace from our normal One Gang format, and we hope this impactful conversation can help even one person. We're joined by 5 legends in the motorcycle industry who have the courage to prove that there's strength in vulnerability. This roster includes Jay Dobyns, all Pac-10 wide receiver at Arizona, a man who spent 27 years as a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. He conducted over 500 undercover operations, including infiltrating the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club during Operation Black Biscuit. After retiring, he became a New York Times best-selling author and now uses his story to help others. Howard Kelly, a respected veteran of the V-Twin world, he spent years shaping the culture of motorcycle media as editor of Hot Bike magazine. Later served in leadership at S&S Cycle and has been a force in the custom motorcycle scene for decades. Howard brings experience, honesty, and a deep understanding of the community we all love. Sam Nehme, a man whose story began far from the motorcycle world. After his family fled a country torn by war, Sam came to the U.S. as a child and found his passion early, becoming one of the best jet ski racers in the world. He entered the power sports industry at just 12 years old and eventually built Broward Motorsports into one of the most successful multi-location dealership groups in the country. Tony Gonzalez, a former firefighter of 25 years who has dedicated his life to service, leadership, and helping others succeed. Today, he's the CEO of Garage Composites, where he coaches teams, develops leaders, and pushes people to rise above the battles they carry. Tony brings heart, experience, and the perspective of someone who's walked through more than most will ever know. And last but definitely not least, Gene Silas, a Marine and former one-percenter who went on to spend over 30 years in the automotive and power sports world, rising through dealership operations and executive leadership roles. Gene has lived through pressure, transition, loss, and rebuilding more than once. What he brings to this conversation is perspective, humility, and the hard-earned wisdom of a man who's still standing. The idea for this conversation was born from an off-air conversation with Gene, and he has great experience having this sometimes life-changing conversation with men. Now here's Serge with more about the show.
What's going on, One Gang? Today's a little different for us. No bikes, no business, just sitting here talking, having a conversation we usually don't have out loud, because no matter who you are, what your life looks like on the outside, we're all carrying something. We all come from different backgrounds, but at some point that weight shows up for everyone. Around the holidays, that weight tends to get heavier. Expectations, finances, memories, losses, the stuff we keep buried has a way of resurfacing. What you're going to hear today are personal experiences, the mistakes we made, the things we got wrong, the moments we hit dark places, and what helped us start climbing out. This isn't advice or a roadmap. It's just an honest conversation based on what we've lived, what we've learned in the hard way, and how we're still figuring things out. If this conversation helps even one person feel less alone, then it's worth having.
Yep. So welcome to The Weight We Carry, guys. It's a holiday conversation about men's mental health. So Serge and I are incredibly honored to be sitting down with some amazing men we're proud to call friends. And these guys have lived through it, carried it, and found the courage to talk about it. We've got Jay Dobyns, Howard Kelly, Sam Nehme, Tony Gonzalez, and Gene Silas. We want to thank you guys for speaking openly about things many of us were raised to stay silent about, and we're carrying the torch for this new generation. So we deeply appreciate you guys. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Before we get into anything, I just want to start with a reality most people never hear. Men make up half the population, but almost 80% of all suicide deaths in the United States are men. And it's hitting younger men the hardest. From 2007 to 2021, suicide rate for boys and young men ages 10 to 24 rose by 60%. So that's not a trend, it's a crisis. And now we're raising generations living on their phones. The CDC reports that heavy social media use is directly linked to higher depression, hopelessness, and suicidal thoughts, especially in teenage boys. So guys, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We know you all have crazy busy schedules, and thanks for opening up. And let's get the show started a little bit. Let's get into the early condition and emotional shutdown, learning silence. We'll start with Jay. What is something you went through as a boy or a young man that you learned to keep completely silent? And how did that silence shape you later in life?
Yeah, like I lived such a perfect childhood. Like everything that you could ever want. It was the happy days life. It was the white picket fence life. My folks stayed together forever. You know, I had a bike and a baseball glove on the handlebars and went to Disneyland in the summer. And like I was set up with everything you could ever want in my childhood. Ultimately, I felt like I fell short of the opportunities that were created for me. In the end, when I look at myself transparently, I've made a million mistakes in my life. I've got a million things wrong, things that I carry the shame of and the humiliations of and the failures of. But the upside of that is that of those million mistakes, between God and my wife and my kids and my friends, they've given me 1,000,001 second chances to try to do better.
Nice. Howard, how about yourself? What's something you went through as a boy or a young man that you learned to keep completely silent?
Every inadequacy that I felt, I bottled that up, right? And in my head, I'm like, okay, I have to fix this and I have to fix that. And if I feel this way, then I should do that, because I was raised by a very old school father, right? And he was a man's man. So we're going to work on cars. We're going to fix things around the house. We're going to take care of stuff outside the house. And we're going to do men things as men. And we're going to just be that. So there was no sensitivity for me. So whatever I felt, I processed, and it actually benefited me greatly in life, because I took all that internalization and that's, okay, I have to fix this. And I took all that responsibility for myself. And I've done that my whole life. And when you asked me about this, remember I told you, like, I'm not the feel good empathy, make everything better by saying the right words to people. I'm the, hey, you can fix this if you want to fix it. I'll help you by pushing you forward to do it. And that's what my whole life has been.
Sam, yourself, what about you? What'd you go through as a young guy that you learned to keep completely silent?
So mine's a little different. We've all got different stories. A situation where my parents ran away from the war in Lebanon, came here in 1970. I was born in 1973. And going to school with two parents that didn't speak any English. My dad was working 3 jobs. My mom was working. I'd come home, try to get help with homework, but they really couldn't help me because they didn't really have an education. But they were in war the whole time that they were living in the Middle East. So I always felt like the dumbest kid in school. Always, my grades were always really poor. Didn't really know how to do better. And I always looked at the guys or kids that were barely even trying, getting better grades. And when you're young like that and you see the kids around you that are doing much better grades, and you're struggling, but you don't have the answer of where to go to really get the help. And your parents don't even realize you're struggling because they don't really understand school the way it is here in America. They didn't get to go through that. So it was always a struggle as a young child saying, man, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, my grades are terrible. I'm not going to do well. Where am I going to end up? So that was something that was always a struggle as a young adult growing up.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I come from the same world, man. My parents were both immigrants, came here, worked all the time, multiple jobs, and they really didn't pay attention. So I was basically growing up on my own, figuring out myself. And that was definitely pros and cons. Tony, what about yourself, buddy? What's something you went through as a young guy that you learned to keep completely silent?
Yeah, it appears to me that we're all relatively the same age-ish. So Gen X, that generation of, or carryovers of shut the hell up and keep moving forward is what you do. And I found out from an early age, right around 3rd grade, maybe when I was 8, that I had a propensity towards anxiety, just things that stick in my head and whether it's separation anxiety from my parents or problems at school or issues with my big brothers. And outside of my house, inside the house, like Jay was saying, I had an idyllic lifestyle, very loving parents that weren't divorced. I had an alcoholic father, but not abusive or violent, just medicated himself. But I didn't really want for anything in life, but I always had this overarching issue with just getting a little bit anxious inside and being able to really ramp myself up if I let myself. But that was just nothing that you ever spoke of I was born in 72. 1980, you didn't talk about that because you were a freak and people would beat you, and you just pushed that down and you kept marching forward. And it's continued into my adult life where now I know the tools to overcome that and manage it and try and help my family as they struggle with it as well. Anxiety, fear of future and things was something that I learned very quickly to put a cap on and push down really far.
Agreed, man. Gene, yourself, buddy?
My father left when I was 3 and never saw him again. And my mother remarried a few years after that to probably one of the most violent people I've ever experienced in my life. I have almost no memories of my childhood, and the only ones I really have, and honestly, I never spoke about this until now. It just hit me as you guys were talking. When I would get disciplined, you remember the old chains that had the rubber around that that's what I would be disciplined with. And as I got older, it just created I was just violent. Honestly, I told you guys a story. My mother put me to go in the Marine Corps because I was just out of control, man. I was very violent upbringing. Jay can relate to this a little bit with his background. My family, my uncles were all old school 1%ers. So we grew up in that mentality. And there never was a talk about this, talk about that. I just grew up in violence, honestly. Yeah. And it took me a lot of years after that to realize, you know what? I don't have to be this violent to get through life, because not everybody has that way. And I'll say this real quick and we'll move on. I was in a church, having master's degrees in theology and philosophy, and I was in a church one day and they walked through different sermon, Moses, or whatever. And I said, ask you a question, just like curiosity, because this was on my heart at the time. I said, how does that relate to a guy that was molested as a child? How's that going to help that guy deal with life? And nobody could ever answer that question. So at that point, it really became important to me. How can I help men get through whatever's going on in their lives?
Ben, you being the youngest member here, what about yourself, man? What's something you went through as a young guy?
Like Tony, I had 2 big brothers, and my mom was very stern. I had incredible parents. I strive to parent my kids in a lot of ways that they parented us. They were awesome. But having a home of only boys, it was like the next question we'll get into talks about which emotion you were taught to hide. And what's interesting is I don't think that I was directly taught to hide anything. It just through osmosis, it just became obvious that you're a boy, you're going to be a man, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You don't show fear, don't be vulnerable. I think vulnerability has a lot of emotions attached to it. And I think it's just tough to hit the nail on exactly what that head is. But I would assume that probably fear would be the biggest one, or even complaining. Don't complain. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody will listen anyway. And so you get that kind of, that seed that's planted tends to grow into insecurity, as much as no man wants to admit that. It's like not being vulnerable, hiding those emotions. It turns into insecurities, and you got to grow past those as you get older. Yeah. What about you? Did you actually answer it, Serge?
For me, it's very similar to Sam. I've had very loving parents, like I said, both immigrants. I think the hardest thing for me was always the fact that with them always working, my brother was 9 years older than me. He was gone. He was doing his thing. So it was just basically growing up as a young kid, but never having really being able to talk to anybody about things. My wife will still say I'm very black and white. It was because my decision making had to be black or white. I couldn't bounce in the middle. So those are some of the things that I remember that I still fight with today, is that being able to just sit down and have an open conversation, a personal conversation, without the fear of being judged or whatever the case may be. So that's probably the biggest thing on me.
All right. So getting into the next question, what emotion were you taught to hide first? And I think maybe we weren't taught directly, but what did we feel like maybe we had to hide? Was it fear, sadness, insecurity, anger? And who did we get that impression from? Was it our dad? Was it our brothers? Was it a mom? And we'll go through the same order. So Jay, Howard, Sam, Tony, Gene. We'll start with Jay. What do you think, man?
Yeah, good question. And all these topics that you guys are hitting on, like I keep nodding my head to everything because I hear what you guys are saying. You know, when I was a kid, my dad was the best man I've ever known. He was a blue collar guy, hardworking, integrity, honest, everything that you'd want to be. And I'm in my front yard and I'm getting beat up by some bullies and they're like kicking the crap out of me. And I hear the door open to my house and I know my dad's coming. My hero's coming, like the best man I've ever known. I'm like, oh, you're in trouble now, bullies. Cause like my hero's coming to save me. And I hear my dad say, keep hitting them. And I'm like, wait a minute, man, you're supposed to be rescuing me. And the bullies stop because they're kind of stunned. And he's like, hit them like you were hitting them before I came out.
Jeez,
and these
man.
bullies keep whipping my ass. And so ultimately they run off and my dad comes over and picks me up and my nose is bleeding and my eyes starting to swell closed. And he said, you have to learn to fight back because if you don't, you're going to spend the rest of your life as a victim.
Wow.
And that, so like dealing with like fear and insecurity and not fitting in, it's like he was taking this opportunity. It was a teaching moment, a life lesson that I didn't really understand at that age, but ultimately came to embrace.
That's crazy.
That's deep, man. Howard, what do you think?
So first I want to clarify something. I'm a boomer, way older than you guys. But similar story to what he just said. I was like 8 years old and I got in a fist fight in the neighborhood and I lost. My instinct was to come home crying. My dad was out in the garage as I came home crying, walked out in the driveway to meet me because he had seen the fight. And the kids in the neighborhood tell me my dad hit me so hard that my feet came off the ground before I hit the ground.
Jeez,
And he said to me, that's how you win a fight.
man.
Next time, win the fight. Dude, I just lost. I just got beat up. And then you beat me up more. And as I got older, I always remembered that. And I was just, and I held it inside, but I held it as a resentment with my dad, basically to the day he died. I had tons of problems with my dad growing up and differences of opinions and me expressing myself versus not expressing myself because that's the way he was raised. So we had that constant back and forth with that. But I just remember the whole, like right to the day he died, that one thing stuck in my head. You could have made that point without leveling me. I was already beat up, but I've held still to this day. I talked about it just now because it still bothered me because I got kicked that day.
Yeah, it sucks.
Twice. Yeah, the second one was a lot worse too. The next day I was outside with the kids and the one kid that I got in the fight with. And he's, man, I'm sorry. Your dad really hit you because of that. I feel bad.
Wow.
Welcome to my dad.
Wow, man. Jeez. All right, Sam, what do you got for us?
Going back to the situation I brought up earlier with the young Nehme growing up and parents came here with nothing. We lived in a trailer park and I always felt inferior to all the friends I had at school that lived in nicer houses or things like that. Did not have all the luxuries and toys and stuff that you wanted. And unfortunately, I started going down the wrong path. And literally one story was like, I saw a kid riding his bike home one day from school. And I said, I really want that bike. So the next day I waited, rode the bike home, got home. Dad said, where'd that come from? And then he knew right away. And I won't say he beat my ass because he did not do anything like that. But the point was, what you did was wrong. You're going to take it back to the kid that you took it from. You're going to give it back to him. And that was a tough lesson because it was a good lesson because at that age, I could have kept on going down that wrong path. But it was one of those things where, hey, I know we can't afford any of this stuff, so I'm going to go out and get it on my own. And it's embarrassing to talk about it today, obviously, because it's the wrong thing. But at the same time, that was a life lesson to where I said to myself, that was definitely wrong. I felt so guilty after I did it. It felt good at the time because I jumped on a nice badass new bike and rode it home. But
I feel you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
Tony?
grief, man. Tony, what do you got?
I think it just goes back to the same story I was telling before, which is children of the 70s and 80s. The big thing was fear. There was no fear, and there is no fear. And if there is fear, pack it down, whether it's talking like you guys, or whether you're getting your ass kicked, or whether it is fear of riding your bike or water skiing or whatever that was. There was a constant feel in my childhood. And again, this wasn't imposed by my parents. My father was a very peaceful guy, and something like laying hands on me or teaching me lessons like that just was not his MO. Definitely my two older brothers would do that for sure. But I think growing up, the one thing I remembered that you were hesitant to show quite a bit of an emotion, because that's just not what we did. You definitely never showed fear. And quite frankly, the counterbalance that would probably be hubris in your behavior and bravado. It was just a different time back then, which I don't think it was all bad, because I see a lot of things going on in today's world where I think kids actually could benefit from a little bit of pecking order and understanding
100%.
what it feels like to get your ass kicked, and how your mouth can't reconcile fists if that's what's coming at you.
Right.
And I definitely knew my pecking order. Like everybody on here, you knew who you messed with and you knew who you didn't mess with.
That's right.
Whether it was sending them an email in today's world, or a text, or social media. I tell my children all the time, like they ask me, hey, what would you do? What would you do, Dad? Or my friend is texting me something that is pretty egregious. And I'm like, man, what would you do? And I said, in my day and age, you would just say, okay, dude, if that's the way you feel, then tomorrow at school,
right,
is settled. You would know by the end of that day who was going to be talking and who wasn't. And so I think that would be the overarching thing for my childhood, was just understanding that pecking order and understanding fear and pushing it down to the best of your ability, which it has also benefited me greatly in my life also to overcoming things.
Yeah. And I think that's probably due to a lot to you having two older brothers. So you knew the pecking order, and you played your position, because if not, like you said, they'd kick your ass, or you'd have to get into an argument with them. So I get it.
Yeah. Gene, what about you, brother?
With my family, we never talked outside of the family. That was always drilled into us. Tattletales, don't be a rat. And that, I probably knew what a rat was at a younger age than anybody else ever knew what it was. And that was always the whole thing. You never talk outside, never talk to nobody. Anybody asks, you're looking back on it, it's just the way they were protecting themselves and all that was going on. Now, my mom, by the grace of God, was the strongest human being that I've ever known. And she got us out of that situation. But Sam, a lot like you, we grew up poor in trailer parks and got to a point where you eat 1 meal a day. But you still, even like that, just didn't talk. But what it did for me, I perfected being very violent at a very young age. And I never really talked about this, honestly, until I got way out of the Marine Corps. Because in the Marine Corps, if you're violent, that's a freaking value add to those guys.
Yeah.
So it took me a while coming out of that before I really looked back on my life and said, you know what? Excuse my language. I was like, I had a fucked up childhood, man. And I just had to recognize that and admit that to start developing myself from within.
Yeah, I feel you, man. For me, I think it was the same thing. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, because everything was to put food on the table. And I remember this part real well. I think I was maybe in like third or fourth grade, and all the kids had Nike sneakers and all this cool weird. And I remember my parents surprised me, and they bought me a pair of Nikes from Kmart, and they were like brown, orange or something. They were ugly as hell. But I was so happy to have a pair of Nikes on my feet. And I went to school, man, and I got dogged. Everybody's making fun of me. It was just like, I still remember that day, dude. It still hurts. It still hurts to think about that. Like how tough kids can be, and how luckily I was like, screw you, but feel that. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I answered it before I asked it, but I think fear, a lot of those things led to insecurities and probably fear. Like nobody would tell you to hide your anger, which is interesting, but they tell you to tone it down when you needed to. But Tony made a good point that some of this that we're talking about is healthy to a point. If you take it too far and out of moderation, then you're creating, it's that old like hard men create soft men saying. So it's a balance or a tightrope to walk with how we bring up our next generation and our kids and how we evolve as men.
I wanted to ask you guys a question. One of them was there a moment as you were growing up and you started observing what was going on within your family, with the way your father acts, the way things are, where you kind of felt, okay, I guess men don't really talk about this specific subject. I know, speaking for myself, my dad had bad anger. He just had an anger problem. And like, he would always burst out and act up. He's a great man. I love my dad. He's still alive. He turns 90 in a couple of days. But I just remember that anger issue. And those are some of the things that I battle sometimes with it too. But one thing I remember is we never talked about like serious subjects. Everything was always swept under the rug a little bit. I don't know if it's that old school mentality or that immigrant thing where they were afraid to be embarrassed. But those are some of the things that I always battled as I've been getting older. Is I just don't remember us really having real hardcore conversations unless I was in trouble or something like that. Well, what about you, Jay? Do you remember anything like that where you felt like, don't talk about this?
Not so much not to discuss things, is that some of the lessons that my folks were putting on me were like above my intellectual level to understand at a young age. I remember one conversation with my dad, and he was talking about friends and friendship. And he told me it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies when it comes to your friends. And I didn't understand that he was talking about value, and that how it's better to have a small circle of those 4 quarters that are going to equal the dollar versus 100 pennies that are just kind of light in the pockets. But like, as we grow and get older, like those things that didn't make sense to me when I was young made perfect sense.
Makes sense. Howard, what about you, buddy?
The whole we need to talk about things was 2 generations after me that became popular, right? Again, as I said in the beginning, right? I figured out there were things that bothered me and I had to work through them. And that's that stereotypical definition of a man. Remember, I was born in 62, right? So there was no sensitivity. There was no, let's make this all better. It was do and fix and move on because you have things to do the next day. Sitting around moping and crying isn't doing anything. And so I was never taught not to do it. That was just the way life was. I mean, all through school and high school and into college, none of my friends had problems, right? My friends were just guys that did what guys did. Nobody, oh, he's got a problem with this and we have to be careful not to talk about that. We talked about every deficiency we saw in people openly and clearly. Man, you're stupid. Man, you can't bench that. What are you, weak? Like, there was no grace to anyone. There was effectively, in the Bible, it says iron sharpens iron, right? Back then, we were iron sharpening iron just because we didn't care what we said to somebody because they were a guy and they were supposed to be able to handle it no matter what. And knowing, I guess, that
Right.
there was no, let's be careful and not talk about that.
Makes sense.
Sam,
What do you got?
Yeah, it was what Jay brought up with the parents and what they talked about. Mine, I guess, were the opposite. They didn't talk about things, girls, sex, words of the bees, any of those kind of conversations growing up. It was like, they thought I was ever old enough or it wasn't happening yet or whatever, their old school mentality. But, I'm 52. We still never had that conversation.
I know, me too, man.
Think back and it was hard working parents busted their butt, did everything they could to put food on the table, and they were and they are, and they're still great parents. They show off their back for anybody. But those type of conversations, this never happened. It was not a conversation. It was never anything as deep as that would ever happen.
Is that cultural? Was there a cultural aspect to that?
So I think so, because they're very old school people till today. Our culture is you don't move out of the house until you get married. If you're not getting married, you just live at home forever. That's the way it is over there. So it is definitely different. Sleeping over your girlfriend's house or your girlfriend sleeping over your house, and all that kind of stuff just did not happen. It wasn't even an option. So I guess you can call it very strict, especially with today's standards. So they're super strict, but those conversations, talk about silence, that was definitely silence there.
Tone, what about you? Was that cultural for you also? Like, men don't talk about this?
There was definitely a Latin influence of, we didn't,
Absolutely.
there wasn't heavy conversations about that kind of stuff. I think a lot of it more in my family was that I'm the youngest of three boys and my brothers were 5 and 8 years older than me. And so it was always this shielding Tony, shielding the kid from all the things. We don't need to talk about this. We don't need to affect him, yada, that kind of thing. So I felt like I was always somewhat kept in the dark, and we didn't do a lot of crazy amount of talking about what was going on, because it would turn into my two older brothers just hammering me about it. Right. So whatever the weakness was, is your older brothers made sure to pound that into you. But again, I really do go back to the 70s and 80s of, it was not a place where that shit was discussed, man. You kept moving forward. And if you needed to the point, you carried it on your shoulders or you packed it deep down inside you.
Yeah. Gene?
We didn't talk about anything, honestly. We were in such survival mode. Really, there wasn't a lot of conversations. My mother had a 5th grade education and was the smartest human being I've ever known, but she wasn't sensitive. I think if we would have sat down and said, hey, Mom, I need to talk to you about this, she probably would have. But hell, she was working 16 hours a day to feed 4 kids and herself.
Man.
So just because of that, we just never had conversations about anything. And definitely couldn't talk to any of my uncles. But hell, they were all doing what they do. We just lived with it and internalized it and just let it eat you up from the inside. And hopefully at some point, people that deal with that had the epiphany that I did, that there's got to be a better way to live life than this way.
Ben, what about yourself, buddy? What were some of the things that you would talk that men don't talk about?
Just like Tony. Probably actually I have the same exact answer as Tony. 2 older brothers, 3 and 5 years older than me. And it was not that somebody outwardly said, we don't talk about that, but that impression trickles down to you as the youngest. And it was the same thing. We don't need to involve the baby with this conversation if one ever happened. But really in my family, it was be strong. And with that comes a lot of baggage that can throw you off your rocker a little bit. I don't think that there was necessarily an exact moment that it occurred to me.
That's great.
Yeah. So here, the next question is probably a fun one because we're going to get some very different answers. So looking at who raised you, what did you guys learn right or wrong about what it means to be a man? And you can loop that into being a father if you have kids. And go ahead, Jay, we'll start with you, man.
Yeah, I think, for all of us, you don't really understand responsibility until you have your own family, until I was married, till I had my own kids. And I coach high school football as well. And like we send these messages to our kids and to our athletes that if you work hard, if you're dedicated, if you're resilient, like a payoff is going to come to you.
Right.
And I think that's a lie that we sell to our kids and to our athletes. God doesn't promise you an easy path. He doesn't even promise you success. He just promises you that when things get difficult, there's someone to turn to lean on, to help you get through it. And I look at myself as a parent and I'm self-critical of myself. I don't look at the successes. I look at the failures.
Yeah.
I look at the things that I got wrong, that I'm like, man, I had a great opportunity there and I blew it.
Yeah.
And I typically blew it, like speaking for myself, is that like I made selfish decisions as an adult, and you can't do that when you have a family.
Right.
I made decisions about me, for my career, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish. And I didn't factor in like how those decisions were going to affect my wife and my kids. And in that process, I put a huge amount of battle damage on my family. Yeah. And that's probably like throughout the course of my life, especially of my career, that's the burden and the shame that I carry, is that, man, like I had the opportunities there and I just didn't do it as well as I should have.
Yeah. And you might still be paying for it a little bit to this day, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm paying for it, but I'm also like taking every day to try to do better and repair that battle damage and get it right.
Yeah. Good answer. Howard, what about you, man?
As I mentioned, my dad raised me to be a man. From a very early age, you're just going to be a man. There's no little kid stuff. I had a job when I was 12, right? that's what men do, right? I went to school and all my spare time was work or riding my motorcycle. That was it. And playing hockey a little bit. And he couldn't understand me even investing the time in hockey when I could either be working or doing motorcycle stuff, because he liked motorcycles. So he connected with that. But there was no outside influence. With my dad's friends, and my dad's friends were identical to my dad. So there was that. Where I got some influence, that, as I'm thinking about it now, was my group of friends, because my group of friends were very different in their families than mine. So there was some influence from them on direction. And I don't have kids now. So I just walked the path that I've walked since I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I was married for a while. And in that marriage, I had some nephews fairly close with. And they were very young when I met them. And they were at the age of adulthood when the marriage ended. And during that time, I watched them be part of the Purell bottled water. Don't touch that, it's dirty. Don't eat that, it was exposed. I literally took them one day, took the 2 nephews, and I took them over to my house. And I said, this is a drill press. This is a regular drill. I'm going to teach you how both of these work. Well, why?
Good uncle.
Because you should know how they work. Hey, I'm thirsty. There's a hose on the side of the house. Go drink. No. What? Go drink from the hose. And as silly as all of that sounded, that was my way of saying, I'm going to toughen you up because your mom sent you to my house with Purell in your backpack. So I guess I was trying to pass along a little bit of what I grew up with that I think shaped me very positively. Although as a kid, I probably didn't appreciate it.
Yeah. Great answer. Sam, what do you got?
Similar. I just watched my father as I grew up working multiple jobs and left 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, came back 11 o'clock at night every day. And it didn't matter if it was rain or shot or what was going on. He was walking out with his little lunchbox that I made for him, and he was going to be a mechanic on heavy duty equipment at the city of Hollywood. He actually worked in the mechanic shop in the Sears hat mechanic shops back in the day. And I saw no matter what was going on, never complained, never, just knew what he had to do. And when you witness that every single day, that I believe is what gave me the work ethic that I think we all have. It sounds like we mentioned earlier, and I think Tony touched on it, that age bracket when we were born, that's all we know. That's who we are. So I believe that's what always gave me that drive. And just like Howard, I started working when I was 12 years old. So when I was working for a local jet ski shop, believe it or not, it was just personal watercraft jet skis. That's how I got into this whole business. I went to work every day like it was my own. And I worked my butt off like it was my own. So I did that because I saw my father do that. One thing that I always tried to change and not follow was my father was going to do that the rest of his life. He was never going to be able to think outside the box.
Right.
I think his risk that he took was running away from war and coming to the U.S., which was a big risk, obviously, with not knowing anybody here. So I think that was his big risk in life. So when he got here, he was just so happy to be here, and doing that job every day was the best thing ever. And he appreciated it because he had a job and he had the ability to go make money. So for me, I wanted to take what I learned from him and that work ethic, and I wanted to grow and not how you work smarter, not harder type thing, I guess is the right way to say it. I have no problem working hard, but I wanted to make it grow into something. And that was where I wanted to take that work ethic, learn from it, but be better. And that was, I would say, the toughness that he gave me and the leadership that he gave me of, it doesn't matter what's going on, you do it. Nothing matters. Complaining doesn't fix it. Nothing's going to put food on the table besides going to it. And he did it every single day and never complained. My dad's 85 years old today and still works his butt. If I call him up right now and say, Dad, I have to dig a ditch, he'll come over and dig a ditch to take fun. That's just who he is. What scares me is that generations now, our kids, my kids, I instill in them the same kind of work ethic because I expect the same out of them. It's so much harder if they get experiencing what we experience. So we've created a better environment for them, which is great. But I look at that as now we've given you a big head start. So I got you up to here, take what I've done and keep on going with it. You got a big head start, a much bigger head start than I think all of us have had.
Yeah. And what better way to learn those characteristics, those appealing characteristics like perseverance, than by example through people who you admire. That's absolutely true. Tony, what do you got?
This goes back and forth. Now, I think earlier in my life, I felt like I had a lot of lessons from my parents of what not to do and how I could be better if I did the opposite of that. And it's not that they weren't hardworking or didn't get things done. It was just, I wanted to do things a little bit different, and probably like you, Sam, I wanted to leverage work to make it work for me as well as working hard. And then I think now that my dad has passed, I'm starting to see so many things. We had a very contentious relationship growing up, especially as I started to have a family and whatnot for different reasons. Nothing super major, but just knocking heads kind of thing. And I'm starting to really appreciate a lot of the great things about him that I didn't do when I was younger. But I wanted to make sure that I worked hard. That was something that I saw my parents do, instill that in my family. And almost to the point, though, where I feel like I've overcorrected. Maybe some of you guys have. Some of you have seen your parents be really hard workers. I think I saw that as well, but I had this fire in me, right, wrong, or indifferent, that I pushed probably too hard, and a little bit like Jay, basically sold my soul on several levels to make sure that I succeeded. And I could look at that also as saying, what you did, what you had to do to get yourself into the position that you're in. And now you can enjoy it. My kids have never been used to me being around a lot because, I spent 25 years as a fireman in my first life. So that was gone quite a bit. And then with this company that I own, that's another 23 years I've been doing this, where I'm traveling. So I was either at the firehouse and then traveling. So they're used to it. Doesn't mean that it's right. And like you, Sam, my kids are like, what the hell, man? None of my friends have to do this shit. And I'm like, yeah, your friends are losers. And your parents are not doing them a service by not making them drink out of a hose or showing them how to use a drill or carrying groceries up. Or one of the biggest damn things, like I've tried to teach my kid, and this is nuts to me, is you stand up when you see a woman standing up. You give her your seat. We're on a subway, a train, a bus, or traveling around the world. Get your ass out of your seat. I am shocked at how many men in this world get on their dead ass while women, old people are standing up. And my kids are just like, you know what? Why do you do that? Nobody, look at all these other people. I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, all these other people are losers. They were not taught the right way to do things. And so I think I probably overcompensate the other way, maybe, but I don't know. We'll see how that works out in the future.
It's a good way, the way you grew up. We all did the same way. I think it might be a generational thing, and it's skipping for some reason. I see the same thing as you do, man. I'll be like, we went to Boston not too long ago for a funeral, man, and we had to go through the subway. We went on the subway, and I'm sitting there, man, this old lady, I'm standing, and there's 3 kids with headphones on and their music. They couldn't have been older than maybe 20, 21, all sitting down. You got like this old lady and this old man standing there holding. And I'm like, I ended up tapping. I couldn't hold my tongue. I tapped the dude on the shoulder. I'm like, come on, man. And he finally stood up. And I think it's the blindness. Everybody's head is down. They don't pay attention what's around them. And I think that's the biggest. And we'll get into that obviously as we go.
I think it's comfort. They want to be, I'm comfortable. I should have this seat. And I'm the asshole too. Like, gentlemen, seriously. The 3 of you.
I don't hold my tongue. It's
your ass is up. Let's go. Yeah, it's sad.
Chivalry is dying. It's up to us to pass it on to our kids.
It's up to the fathers.
Gene, what's your opinion?
My mother is who I get most of my upbringing from, obviously. She just worked, man, just to provide. And that really instilled in me that no matter what, you got to provide. It doesn't make a shit what the economy is doing. It doesn't make a shit what war's going on. None of that shit matters. You got a family. It's up to you to go out there and provide for them. And a lot like Tony was talking about, I worked all the time. And working all the time and not being there for my family the way that I should have been emotionally. My son is the most respectful kid you ever see. What you guys are talking about, I've told us, look, you're not entitled. So I told you those basics. But what I didn't do is say, son, if you ever need to talk about anything, that's what I'm here for. So what happens? He goes, he searches out a group of men. And what happens then? He's 23 now. He's 7 years into recovery. That's what happens as we, as fathers, don't give our sons that avenue to say, hey, don't make what it is. Come and talk to me. They seek out. I think as men, we seek out that tribe. Jay's been around the life. I've been around 1% of life my whole life. And that's one of the reasons I think a lot of guys get into that type of environment is they need that tribe of men around them to open up and talk to. So that was the result of me working all the time. As my son became an addict, by the grace of God, he's been clean. But that being said, that's the biggest lesson I learned is you can work all the time and drive your family into the absolute dirt emotionally, spiritually. That's where we have really got to step up.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
What'd you pick up from your parents, Serge?
Obviously, just I'm the same generation as all these guys. It's definitely the work ethic. I'm immigrant parents every day get up, lunch, they go to work, they come back late, so on and so on. I would say what I learned the most was really more in the streets. I grew up in the streets. I was a kid with a chain and my key on there, and I'd go to school, I'd come back, I'd have to do everything basically on my own for most of my life. So everything I learned was from older kids. Got myself in trouble, of course, following bad paths and all that stuff. But for the most part, the most important thing was my old man used to always tell me, he'd say, your name is everything. So what you put your name into, you put it into shit or you put it into something good, but it's going to stay there depending on which road you go. So that always stuck with me growing up in South Boston area where drugs are rapid. You grow up quick. You're exposed to a lot of things at a very young age. And I think that was some of the things that always scared me was when I would be in situations where there was crazy stuff going on that somehow I'd find my way and pull myself out of there and just make up an excuse and get the hell out because I always heard my old man's voice. So that always stood with me, I would say.
Right on.
I think that
parents-
I apologize. I just got my mind. So I think, Serge, you and Sam have probably a little different perspective and outlook on having immigrant parents, especially Sam, parents coming over not speaking English and being able to survive. God bless them for that. That's a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's more and more common today.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Guys, let's get into one thing as we are getting out of our youth and now going into more of an adulthood world. Obviously, we all come from different backgrounds, so everybody's bringing a little bit of whatever they're bringing from their upbringing. I know, Gene, you went to the Marines at a young age, right after high school. Jay, you went to college, right? And then, Tony, did you go to college right after high school?
Did.
I did too. Sam, you went to college or did you? Oh, gotcha. And Howard, what about you, buddy?
I started college, but that whole working that whole time, I was 19 and a half and I became a full-time salesman in an automotive tire store. And by the time I was 20, almost 21, I was manager of one of those stores. And in my head, I was making all the money you could possibly ever make in life.
Right.
And I just never went back to school. I was like, this is stupid. I'm learning more running a business than I'm learning in school. And so
Jay, what do you most remember when you went to college, taking from your youth? Did you bring any of those, whether it was insecurities, whatever the situation was? I know Jay was a all Pac-10 wide receiver at University of Arizona. He was a tremendous athlete coming out. Jay, what were some of the battles you were going into when you were going into college at a young guy, 18, 19 years old?
Yeah, like real quick before I answer that question, hearing all your guys' stories, there's a big common denominator in there in that these people that were our role models, whether they be our parents or our friends or our family, that they all showed us like maybe the best of who we wanted to be. Like I didn't always live up to it. Like in Gene's case, and hearing his story, in the abuse that he had as a kid, he probably also learned who he didn't want to be. And there's lessons to be learned in all that. But like going to college, like I found my identity through athletics. I was, for the most part, insecure. And that athletics and finding success in athletics gave me something to hold on to, an identity that gave me something to be proud of. And I think I was searching for that. And that's ultimately where I found it, was through sports.
Yeah. Sam, what about you? At that age point of your life, what were some of the things you were battling as a young guy?
I mentioned earlier, I started working early. When I finally graduated high school, my parents just heard about this thing called college, and everybody has to go to college. They really didn't understand it. They really had no idea that they couldn't afford it. Nor did I qualify for anything to go there with a 2.8 GPA. The local college here, I signed up for that. I signed up for a couple classes in the morning, and I said to myself, my end goal, because I was working at a dealership, is I want to have a dealership one day. That's what I want to do. But what was interesting is I was going to take accounting classes and things like that I thought would help me with business classes and accounting classes, basically what I signed up for. And what I had realized is the textbook stuff that we were learning was so outdated compared to real life stuff that was going on today. I know more about what they're saying than they're actually saying, and I'm already experiencing it in the real life world. And at the time, I would make a lot of money for my age, so I thought, I'm set, that's good. So I really didn't care. I was just doing it to make them happy. And I did it for the first 2 years. During that time, I worked for two brothers, and I started working for them when I was 12 years old. They had two dealerships, and I worked my way up in the dealerships. And it just so happened that they got in a lot of legal trouble, ended up having to go to prison for a long time. So when this was all happening, these were like my role models, right? I didn't have any brothers. I had a sister, but I didn't have any brothers. These two guys were, I guess, 10 years older than me, 10, 15 years older than me. And I looked at them as role models. These are my brothers. They've got my back. Then they get in all this trouble. And of course, you're blind saying, man, no, these are my brothers. They're not guilty. They're not guilty of all these charges. And it was pretty bad stuff. And they were found guilty. So they were getting ready to go away. And they basically came to me and said, hey, we need you to run the business. Nobody knows our business better than you do. You've been here since you were 12. My mom can't do it. My sister can't do it. We really need you to do it. And I said, well, like I mentioned earlier, I always treated it like it was my own. So I took over running the business at such a young age. And I had no choice but to grow up fast, but to learn everything. And I missed those years of partying and going away to college, all those things, because I was 100% focused on, I've got to keep this place alive for these guys to get out. And one got 6 years, one got 9 years. And I said, this is what I got to do. So it was an overnight kick in the butt saying, you know what, it's time for adulthood and you got to get serious. And that's what molded me into being in this industry, being in this business, and sticking to it until years later. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, it was fortunate for them, but the business got sold off about 6 years later, and got sold off for a lot of money. And when all that happened, one was just getting out, one was still in, and guess who they forgot about?
Of course, the one who ran it.
Yeah. So it was another life lesson in that situation. I really looked at these guys as blood. I would do anything. I did do a lot for them that I probably shouldn't have done during those years.
Amazing how many people we run across in our lives that we put all our faith and trust into, and then the first chance they get, they forget you and forget everything that's been done. Crazy story, man.
Better to have 4 quarters and 100 pennies.
There you go. When you said that, I started laughing because I've never used those words for that, but I've used that so many times with my kids and everybody. Like, listen, it's not about how many friends you have, it's the ones that count. And in this situation, these weren't, to me, they were family, they were brothers. And that at that young of an age, that was a real rude awakening. And a tough lesson to learn for sure.
Yeah.
Tone, you went to college and then to the fire department. Is that how your career path went?
Yeah. I went to the University of Colorado. I went to the fire department after that. Getting out of a small town with small town thinking. And I think college was I believe strongly in college for sure. It has definitely done wonders for me. And I've taken quite a bit of different college classes and degrees and whatnot. And so I think it's a fantastic path. And I think it catches a lot of flack these days when it shouldn't for its purpose. If you're going there for a purpose and you know what you're getting yourself into, I think it's a fantastic route for a kid to take, along with trade schools, along with the military. I think it's just a different route. I knew I had my eye on the prize of working for a professional fire department. And life for me in college was like any other red-blooded American kid. I had quite a bit of fun, probably more fun than I did focusing on my grades while I was 18 to 22, but made it out and did it, and then got on the fire department shortly thereafter. And then my whole life and mindset and everything changed when that happened. That brought all kinds of really great things to my life, and it allowed for really great experiences. And it also had the ability to plunge me into the darkest places that I've ever been, and brought out the worst in me and showed me some of the just nastiest things that life can do to you.
How old are you at this point?
I got hired on the fire department when I was 21. Yeah.
So you experienced a lot at a young age then, huh? Where you went
You know,
pretty deep?
yeah. And Jay, I don't know when you got hired on to be in law enforcement. It's funny. That's another thing. I look at the new generation and where they are in life. And I was like, man, when I was 21, they slapped a badge on me and expected me to perform like right now. And yeah, it's a duality of your life where everything it gave to you and everything that you did and you saw and the responsibility that you had at such a young age. I was raised by men, ballsy men. And so a lot of this gap years and I don't know, I need to go find myself.
Right.
That
Go
just was
back and all that stuff. Yeah.
that was not a thing, man. And you were expected to perform. And then, like I said, the other side is you didn't know when you're that young that you were doing just never would leave you and leaves you beaten and battered and mentally fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gene, what about yourself, man? I know your mom took you to the recruiter, signed you up to the Marines. You obviously went into a completely different, shocking environment, something that you weren't used to, which was strong discipline. Take us a little bit into that part of it and, you know, your mentality at that point in time from what you were coming from to where you are.
Those guys, Tony knows me. You guys know me pretty well. And I'm not a real big chest beater and stuff like that. But back at 16, 17, I was beating shit out of people almost on the daily. And I was in all kind of trouble. And I think the judge told my mom, said, look, his path is one of two, prison or the graveyard. That's his only two paths if he doesn't do something. So she tells me, she says, you're going to go in the military. So my dumb ass thinking, you know what? I'm going to tell him I'm going to the Marine Corps. Because the only reason I popped in my mind is just a few years before that is whenever the Marine barracks got bombed in Lebanon. So I was like, she'll never let me go to that. She said, cool. Takes me straight to the Marine recruiting office. I want to sign to put his ass in. And at 17, I was in the Marine Corps. And what I learned is this. I wasn't the baddest walking at all. And as you get to the Marine Corps, you start doing seeing different things. You realize, you know what? You can't do life by yourself, especially when you're putting your life in another man's hand and him putting his life in yours. It just takes on a whole different perspective. The responsibility is different. Life is different. You just reframes everything that I had up until that point. And if she had not done that, I would be dead or in prison right now. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So she saved my life on that one. And I've told her that up until the day she passed frequently that she did.
Did you bring a lot of that anger from your youth into the Marine Corps?
I did. Yeah, they beat the shit out of me and got it out of me pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? It's kind of like a dichotomy almost because they want that aggression, that anger, but it's got to be controlled. So what they really did for me is they helped me control that mentality and that anger. So it wasn't just that quick. I was able to really internalize it and use it for when it needed to be utilized and not utilize on every freaking body that looked at you crossway.
For sure. Ben, what about yourself, man? What followed you into high school and early adulthood?
I would actually take the positive side. My parents raised me on two pillars. It was integrity, which when I was younger, they taught me that means doing the right thing when no one's looking. And then the second pillar was rule. So treating each other the way you want to be treated. And people in our community would call my mom and my dad both professional volunteers. And I always thought that was so cool to hear people say that about my own parents. And it instilled this pride in me. So moving out of the house, I was always focused on integrity, the golden rule, and volunteering. So contributing to my community. And that is, if you're depressed, if you're in a low place, there's nothing that will pick you up besides knees in the breeze. Nothing that'll pick you up more than helping other people who are worse off than you are.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Howard, did you get a chance to answer that question?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You started it. All right. Next section we're getting into is the masks we wear, and we'll switch the order up a little bit. But what's the one mask you wore the longest as a man and maybe still struggle with it? And why did you feel you had to wear it? And what did that mask cost you in your relationships, your mental health, and the way you saw yourself? And Sam, we'll start with you, brother.
I think we all like have to wear it every day. It's the tough mask that
Sure.
nothing matters. You're the man, you're the business, the leader of the pack, or whatever the case might be. So it doesn't matter what gets thrown your way. You got to be ready for it. You got to handle it. You can't stress over it, and you got to respond and respond quickly. And I think that it's embedded in us where that's just what we are. I think as we get older, we've done it for so long, it's just automatic. I hear it a million times from personal friends, family, just every day. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. And I respond to what? What do you mean? How are you dealing with this, dealing with that, dealing with 450 employees and 8 dealerships and the family and this and that? Like, how do you do it all? And you just do it. It's something I think that you evolve into. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think as you evolve as a person, evolve as a man, evolve in business and all those things, it all comes together. It's just what you do. So it's what I wouldn't want it any other way. So I wouldn't want to not have that stress, not have those headaches, not have, I created it. And every time I say, why do I keep doing this? I go out and start another story. You know,
Right.
I thrive on it.
It's fuel, man. It's fuel.
And I think the key is happiness. You got to be happy in life. You got to be happy in your relationship with your spouse. You have to be, happy with your home life, happy with the career path you're in. And all these things have to really align to be able to have that driving force to keep on pushing forward. Because any one of those things that's not there drags you back. And if you can't be 100% focused because you're 80% or 50% focused, because that other 50% is being focused on these things that are dragging you back or slowing you down, it's hard to succeed, right? It's hard to keep growing. And when you have all those things going in the right direction, it makes everything a lot easier. And you got to create it. If you pass those steps, you'll never get to the goal. I think we all have that goal in life, right? We all know where we want to be and what we want to accomplish. And you can't get there if you don't lay the groundwork leading up to it. So going back to the mask, it's that warrior. It's that mask that you got put on that you're a warrior. Nothing matters. You can't show emotion. You can't feel emotion. You got to succeed. I'm going to win. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. Solid. Great answer. Tony, what do you got?
I think the mask that I wore and believed in for a long time, and I feel has served me very well, but also comes at a cost, is impervious. Just one step in front of the other. I think if you're in the business of being, like Gene said, in the military or fire, or like Jay in law enforcement, you better believe in your head that you have a level of grit that is impervious, because if you don't have that, you're going to have a hard time doing that job. And it served me well, but I think as much as it kinetically served me when I had an axe or a hose in my hand, I think emotionally it made me unintelligent for a long time of not being able to foster and grow the ability to be anything but impervious. Everything was that you were tough and badass and you had a hard time explaining your emotions, and you didn't dare, in my first 20 years of being in the fire service, you didn't dare show chinks in your armor. It greatly would make your peers suspicious of you in a good way, meaning, man, is he with it enough to come to work and make sure that my ass goes home, right? There was a lot to be pushed down and to be impervious. It greatly has affected my emotional side of life and how I deal with the loved ones, my wife, how I parent, which is full of mistakes every day. That's just the nature of the business. But impervious, the mask that I think I wore, that I most certainly am continuing to claw off.
Nice.
Right on. Howard, what about you?
I wore a mask for Halloween a couple times, but that was pretty much it. And I have to sound like I'm on repeat with this, but I've been this person my whole life. Very straightforward, going to say it like it is. In fact, when I told my fiance that I was going to do this, and she said, they want you to talk about things that she's like, you don't. And I'm like, no, I do. It's very black and white. This broken, I have to fix it. This is good. I don't have to touch it. And I've carried that through my whole life. Like everybody's saying, right? You got to be the man. You got to be the warrior. You got to make sure you do. And I have. And it's funny is I'm the most supportive guy in the world for my team, right? And I'll mentor them and help them and push them and whatever it takes to help them succeed. But I do it all without, it's a great job. Man, yours is the best at this, right? Is it? All right, we've got to get to this finish line. So let's get there. How can I help you get there? That's the accolade. That's the thing. So that who I am, the way I am, it carries into everything I do. It's probably been bad for some relationships. It's probably been good for some, depending on the kind of person and how they react to directness and candid honesty. But again, I started with that joke, right? I wore a mask for Halloween, and that really has been it in 63 years of life.
Man. So Jay, what do you got?
I think like hearing Tony's story, hearing about Gene and the Marines, at my peers, I was surrounded by alpha dogs, but my peers were straight pipe hitters, man. And like Gene said, you think you're the toughest guy out there, there's always someone bigger or stronger right around the corner ready to knock you out, man, regardless of who you think you are. And I think this is a common denominator on this panel here. There's people in the world who are content to be average, and average people serve a purpose, that they have value to all of us. There's people who want to be great. They want to be exceptional, and they do great things. But there's a handful of people in the world who truly want to be elite. They want to be different than everybody else at that elite level. Yep. And to be elite, you have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed with whatever that goal is, that target is. And that obsession is a double-edged sword. That obsession that we have takes us to great heights, but there's a price to pay for it. That obsession in my life, like around my family, I was physically present much of the time, but I wasn't emotionally or intellectually connected. My brain was somewhere else chasing this elite level. And in trying to be elite, I cheated my family, but by not giving them that same level of focus.
That's solid. That's a vulnerable answer, man. Thanks. Gene, what do you got?
For me, I think the mask evolves. I think it's still evolving where I was to where I am. I try not to have any mask on. I try to be very open with anybody that I have these conversations with. Just when we did the podcast, Serge, I just now in my life, I wake up every day and I ask myself, what can I do to make a difference in somebody's life, whoever that is? And that's a goal for me every day as I get up, and whatever that looks like. And I've really tried to be open and more there for men. I'm a big jiu-jitsu guy, Tony is, and that community has really helped me a lot to get to that goal. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but my mask right now is much different than it was years ago.
Did you guys talk to anyone, Sam, like when you were going through your stuff, right? You got all this at a young age, you got this responsibility, and now you've got this passion and drive to go get your dream of what you're chasing. Did you actually have anybody at that time, because you're young, you're so focused, you're hungry, that you could sit down with? Was your wife a person that you can sit down with and just spill everything that you can from a guy's point of view? Or did you have somebody that you could lean on at that time a little bit more that you can talk to?
I mean, for sure, I was able to confide in her and what I was thinking, what I was wanting. You never want to sound scared in front of you, wherever it might be. So, of course, you hold back and lead on as much as you want to lead on for them to understand what's going on. But that fear factor, especially in that point of your life, you're making such big changes, which I always go back and say, thank God I did it when I was younger. It's a lot harder when you're older.
That's right.
A lot easier to take that risk when you're young. But at the same time, you're scared, you're nervous. I didn't have money to fall back on. I didn't have rich parents. I didn't have a way out if I failed. And I remember the story distinctly. We were married, had a 6-month-old, and that was the point where all this stuff had happened. And I said to myself that this is probably the opportunity. I've got to go do something. And I found a little store that was going out of business, and it was Yamaha Suzuki. Yamaha had already pulled up the franchise. It was only Suzuki. I'm like, we can't survive on Suzuki alone, but let me see if I can buy the store for peanuts. And I had a phone call with Yamaha saying, hey, if I were to buy the store, would you guys come back? They literally just backed the truck up, loaded up all the bikes, and they were gone. They were out. They pulled the franchise. And Yamaha knew me enough from my years of being that general manager and said, yeah, you can get that store. We'll be back in. So I went to my wife. I said, I have an opportunity to get the store, but we've got to put our house that we just bought up on the line as collateral for me to be able to pull this off. And that was a tough conversation, 6-month-old, and knowing that there's no second chance.
Yeah.
And my wife's only question was, is there a roof over our head that we can go to if it doesn't work out? And I said, my parents would always let us in.
Ride or die.
A roof over our head for you being our daughter, is do it. I believe in you. So that was a tough time, but at that time, it was hard to have that conversation with my parents because they really didn't understand it. They thought I was crazy. What are you doing? This is way too much. This was way too risky. Like they were very, I guess,
risk adverse,
easygoing, and they didn't want risk. They were scared. They're scared for me. And so, yeah, it was hard at that time because, again, it goes back to wanting to be that tough guy and that man that you're supposed to be. And at that age, as confident as you are, you still have that fear factor. What if? The big what if. Luckily, it worked out. In that point in time, it was definitely nerve-wracking. And she was the only one I could really confide in to talk about it.
That's awesome. Tom, what about you, man? As you're going through these battles, you got 20 years in, balancing the family. Did you have somebody that you can just honestly sit down and talk with, or was it everything you were holding inside? Did you have that person in your life at that time?
I had already been on the fire up in years, I think, before I got married. So I think I found counsel in my peers, right? And talk people in careers to find trust and solace in people outside of those careers that haven't done that kind of stuff. And so, unfortunately, I found solace in the Brotherhood of the Fire Service and, beers. Like I'm not an alcoholic, never was, but I was an alcohol abuser.
Right.
That's very part and parcel to the Air Service. American Police Service is just tons and tons of drinking. So, when I found myself, and you need a pick me up. Your bros, and you'd crawl in a bottle, and you'd go and hit the bars and make yourself better until you felt better, and that's pretty much as I did. And then when I got married and started having kids, and I started going more professional of, leaning on psychologists and really understanding,
Nice.
Really having no problem. Last couple of years I was on the fire department, and most certainly from then on out, screaming from the mountaintops that I absolutely have a counselor, and I absolutely talk to somebody, and I absolutely work my problems out with her. And for anybody that is watching this, you could always talk to me about this. I have no shame in admitting that. And anybody that needs help should go and talk to somebody professional, because talk therapy works and it helps.
There used to be such a stigma to that. Oh, you're weak. You go to counseling, you baby.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny. First time I said that to my dad when I first got divorced, and I didn't have my son around. It was just every other week, and I was killing me. And I started seeing somebody who was doing the same thing. I started rambunctiously drinking. I'm not a drinker by any means, nor am I a drug abuser, but I just started drinking, and it was just to numb the pain. And I remember the first time I talked to my parents, and I said, hey, I think I'm going to go see somebody. I think I'm going to go talk to somebody. I said, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a lot of panic attacks. I was missing my kid. And my dad said, like, why? You can talk to us. And I'm like, no, it's not the same. We're just holding that stuff in because they don't understand it. Jay, what about yourself, brother? Who did you turn to, man, in those dark times? Because you went through some real dark times. We know, I think a lot of everybody here knows your story and your journey, man. It's been well published. What you've been through, it's probably a lot more than most men go through in 15 lifetimes. So take us a little bit into dark days, and man, and who you talked to and helped you through it.
I think there's, again, a common denominator here in that risk keeps coming up. For me, I became addicted to risk. Risk was my heroin. And the more risk I overcame, the more dangerous a situation that I was able to get through. It was empowering, but I was constantly seeking more risk and more danger. And the people that I was surrounded by, my peers, were the same way. We were bad for each other. like no one was grounding the other guy. Everybody was trying to outdo the next guy. And like, I know what heroes look like. I've walked alongside some heroes. My story has a hero. It's surely not me. The hero of my story is my wife, because she was that person who, like, always stayed grounded when I was out of control, when I was a mess. There was a time I'd been gone for an extended amount of time on some operations, and I came home and my wife challenged me. She said, "You cannot be gone and walk in this house and speak to me and the kids like we're street gangsters." And in my self-defense, I was like, I'm not a light switch. I can't turn this on and off. I have to be on all the time. People who do what I do for a living and treat it like a hobby end up dead. And then her reply was, I understand that, but when you come to this house, you better take that light switch and install a dimmer and dial that attitude down. And if you can't do that, if you can't check yourself when you come home, then you're not welcome here. That's hard to hear from your hero.
Yeah. Jeez, man.
Gene, what about you, man? Who'd you turn to in those dark days? Did you have somebody you could sit down with at a younger age and just kind of let it go? Or was this just a constant battle inside?
For the good or the bad, I think the other Tony knows this. I joined 1% Motorcycle Club, and that was who I found solace in. It was a quintessential military, a lot of military guys, so you get that. But it's interesting to hear Jay and Tony talk about open up to their wives. So my girlfriend and I, she's always on my ass about this. In my mind, and maybe you guys, we can have this conversation off this because I struggle with this. In my mind, I told her, I said, look, if I told you everything that goes through this head, you would perceive me as a different man. So I just don't open up to her. So that creates a whole thing. So I'm glad to hear you guys say that, because I struggle with that, because obviously that's the most important person in your life. So you want to open up, but it's definitely a relationship issue that we deal with. I just have not been able to do that. But fortunately, I had some really good guys around me, some good brothers. I consider them brothers, and they really helped me a lot. Conversely, we helped each other a lot because we all came basically from the same backgrounds with that stuff.
Yeah. Howard, what about you, man? In those times as you're moving forward and you got all this, you got this black and white mindset all the time because that's how you grew up. And obviously our generations weren't really, like Tony was saying in the beginning, talking to a professional, that was unheard of. People looked at you different and it's something you were embarrassed about. How did you handle the things that you were battling with?
So remember I talked about being really supportive of other people, right? Up until a certain point in my life, I didn't care about anybody. Just me. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to get there. Couldn't care less about you or your problems or how you're handling things. I'm going to take a second and tell a little story that helped me shape into a different person. When I moved to California because I wanted to work on a motorcycle magazine. Had no knowledge of how to do it, had no idea what it took, had no idea how I was going to do it. But I left Philadelphia and moved to California and said, I'm going to work on a motorcycle magazine. So I set out trying to find my way in, and I ran into a guy that was a media buyer. And back years ago, media mattered with magazines and who bought the ads and stuff. And he connected me with the publisher of Cycle World and the publisher of Motorcyclists. He said, you got to send your resume to these two guys. I went home and I typed out a resume because there were no computers, and I photocopied it and I put in an envelope and I mailed it to these two guys. And these two guys did exactly what publishers did. They took the reference from the guy that spends a lot of money with them, said, I'll take care of it. And they walked my resume down to the editors of both of those magazines. And that time it was David Edwards at Cycle World and Mitch Bain at Motorcyclists. David Edwards took the time to call me up and tell me that since I didn't have a degree in journalism and I hadn't raced motorcycles professionally, zero chance of getting a job in the industry, but he appreciated my enthusiasm. Mitch Bain calls me up and he's like, hey, come in and we'll talk. And I went in and I talked to Mitch Bain and we got along great. And it was like, wow, this guy's amazing. Like, he's got this dream job. He's the editor of this cool magazine. I still don't know what goes into being and working in a magazine, but I'm there now, right? I'm in the office. They invite me to go do a photo shoot over a weekend, just be one of the background riders for something. I'm thinking it's the greatest thing in the world because I'm getting paid, potentially. I'm riding somebody else's motorcycle and I'm having fun. Get back on the Monday and Mitch says to me, hey, everybody liked working with you. You're great. You don't have any editorial jobs. The only job we have is a shop foreman. Now, at this time, I'm running a high-end exotic car body shop in Beverly Hills. Right? I'm dealing with Hollywood people and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all this stuff. Shop foreman, what's that? What's the guy that drives the van and picks up the motorcycles and washes the bikes and get ready for photo shoots? I would never offer that to you with what you're doing in life. And I'm like, I'll take it. What do you mean you'll take it? I'm not offering it to you. No, I want to do it. Because if I do it, I'm going to learn this. And Mitch looked at me and he says, you really want to? I said, yeah, I really want to. He says, all right, then you'll do it. And it was that moment that I saw somebody open a door for me, even though they didn't realize they were opening a door for me. And that led to all the other magazine jobs that I had because I was willing to wash motorcycles. And what that put in my head was, when I can do that for somebody, no matter what it might be, I'll always do it. So that was that shift in me of less about I'm just black and white and this is what I'm going to do, to there'll be this gray area in my black and white where I try to help other people.
That's cool.
I know it was a long story, but
that's cool. That's cool. That's where it got you to where you needed to go. So that's awesome to hear. All right, guys, we're going to do a little shift here. We're going to talk about the war on masculinity. All right. There is, over the last, let's say, maybe 10, 15 years, identity confusion, emotional fallout, loss of direction for a lot of young men. You see it, a lot of stereotype, white privilege, this privilege, that privilege. And I think that what we're seeing with these high suicide rates of the youth, it's been humongous. So I wanted to ask you guys, these are opinion based, and I think it's just important that we talk about this because this really doesn't get talked about that much. When masculinity is labeled as toxic, what does that do to a young man internally, basically to his confidence, his sense of purpose, or his willingness? In your mind, Gene, when you hear that, what's going on now in society for young men, what does your mind go to, and what kind of advice are you thinking to give these guys?
I got to tell you, what these younger generation, I don't know what generation this is now, what you would call them, but anyway.
What is it, Z or something? C?
Well, yeah. What they deal with, to me, is, I don't envy it even a little bit with all the advances and stuff like that, because when we were coming up, it was pretty cut and dry what we considered a man would be. But now, you don't really know. So my son, I say beating him, that's not the right way to put it, but always just told him, hey, you know what, at the end of the day, respect is a foundation for everything, and just help build him up off of that. But I think if we, on this panel, people watching this, really want to teach our younger generation what a man is, I think you almost have to go to the biblical principles of what it means to be a man. And being a man is not the toughest guy. It's not the guy that has most money, or what have you, or has most women. That's not what it really means to be a man. Are you making a difference? Are you humble? You're a servant leader. It's pretty cut and dry if you read it out of the Bible, what a real man is. And I'll say this, and I'll be quiet. We look at Jesus Christ, and a lot of people, we've had this conversation, we did our podcast, look at Jesus as maybe a weak guy. But I got to tell you, man, that was the strongest man that ever walked the friggin' earth. And the example that he left for us, that should be the answer to what that question right there is, in my opinion. But anyway, that's just my opinion.
Amen.
Jay, what about you? Why do you think there's such an attack on masculinity right now, calling it toxic?
I'll tell you a personal story that's not a flattering story. Like, I'm in the middle of my undercover life and I'm ripping and running as hard as I can and making selfish decisions. And I would come home, and when I would come home, I did the bare minimum I had to do to keep my family functioning. I'd pay the bills, mow the grass, pat the kids on the head, have a cup of coffee with my wife, because I couldn't wait to get out and be smoking and joking with gangsters. And every time I'd get ready to leave, my son, who was probably 8 years old at the time, would run out in the yard, say, Dad, don't leave yet. I got something for you. And he'd give me a rock. He'd give me a little stone out of the yard. And for an extended period of time, literally for years, I believed he'd been giving me good luck charms. And
That's cool.
right before a very treacherous operation we were getting ready to pull off, I'm at home. I go through my routine, same routine from Jackie. Dad, don't leave yet. I know what's coming. And he puts this stone in my hand. And I'm trying to comfort my little boy. And I said, all those things that I haven't been doing with you, that I should be as a dad, I'm almost done with this. And we're going to play catch, and we're going to ride bikes, and we're going to wrestle, and we're going to go to the movies, and we're going to read books. And it's all because of these stones you've been giving me, all these good luck charms you've been giving me. I'm almost there. And my little boy's standing in my driveway, and tears start running down his cheeks.
Man.
And he said, Dad, those weren't for good luck. You should have never given those away to anybody. You should have kept every one of them. And my brain stopped. And I'm like, for years, I thought he'd been giving me good luck charms. And he said, that is for you to put in your pocket. And every time you think someone's going to hurt you, you could put your hand in there and touch it. And that's like me being there to help you fight back. That is what I had done to my kid. That's what I had done to my little boy. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to raise a good man. I wanted to raise like a young man that stood for something. And I sent him in exactly the opposite direction, like chasing that ideal of what a man is.
Thanks for sharing that, Jay. That's strong.
Thanks.
Tone, what about yourself, man? Why do you think there's such an attack on masculinity right now and everybody calling it toxic?
Got this sign behind me for my company. So this isn't my company talking. This is my own personal opinion. But
hey, dim the lights. Dim the lights on the sign, man.
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a couple already. Is I just think there was this, whether you're a big believer in God, in a lack of God in people's lives, a lack of respect and manners, and easing of parenting because we were lazy or we wanted to make sure our children always felt good. One lesson that I think our generation and the generations before us felt was life isn't always about feeling good, and life isn't always about winning. There's a lot of losing that goes on, and nothing about life is fair. And life is hard as hell, and life hurts, and life hands you losses. And this is all counterbalanced by the great things that life brings you, and the sunshine and the vacations and the loving moments of our family. But I think somewhere along the way that has become, we want to erase things that don't make us feel good or make us feel safe, or we want to pretend that there's not evil or strife in the world. And you can see it all around you, from young men that won't get up and let women sit down in chairs, or not. I teach my kids that we don't use people's first names, or if we do, it's Mr. this and
Mr.
Where there's a respect level. And I also tell my kids' friends, when you come into my house, like, don't think we're bros and we're fist bumping. Like, you're going to respect my house and me. And I think people see that as somehow as like the toxic alpha, beating your wife, shooting guns kind of. And it's not. It's the ability to go out that women cannot. But it's the ability to get some money and work your ass off and take care of your family and raise good boys or girls, and also stand up for what is right in the world out there, instead of sitting. How many times you guys see videos on this shit on the internet where you just see men literally sitting as other men impose their will on women or on weak men? People just sit there, and it's like, that's so toxically masculine. So be it. And I'm of the age where I don't have to care anymore about what that is. I don't have to buy into into Gen Z and millennial. I believe in what I believe, and that's how I'm going to raise my boys. And then the last thing is there is a serious lack of not having your nose bloodied, not breaking a bone.
Some people need to get punched in the face.
Yes, not some people. you do need to grow up as a boy
Just in
and
general.
get punched in the face and know what that feels like. Because if you don't, like, oh my God, when you grow into a man and you're protecting your home, what do you do?
That's right.
So
Yep.
I believe there has been a loss, and we have protected our children from, these words
Everything.
of bullying,
Everything.
everything that, like, man, you got to feel some adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, what about yourself, buddy? What do you feel it's been such an attack on that?
I think the biggest problem, honestly, is social media. I think that the younger generation live on it. They're seeing all this bullshit that everybody posts. They believe it's all true. For AI now, forget it. Now you can't trust anything. But putting AI aside, people post pictures about how happy they are or what they're doing, and half the time it's fake. They're putting on that image, and then these guys feel inferior, or why am I not that person, or why am I not that happy, sad, whatever it is. Why is that not me? It's not real. It's an image that people want you to believe, and it's grown out of hand. And I do truly feel that that's probably the biggest threat to the men and women. It's not just men, it's everything. But it's the biggest threat is these false feelings that people put out there they believe are true. And it goes back to getting punched in the eye and drinking from the garden hose and riding your bike for miles to get to point A to point B, and not riding an e-bike or a electric bike of some sort and assist. And all the kids that we were growing up, you didn't have all that. You had to do it. It's just the way it was. I want kids like we were when we talk about trans, talking about transmission, not transvestites.
I know, man.
God created man and woman, and that's it. That's it. Man and woman. None of this other bullshit that they're teaching in schools and college and all this crap that's creating these problems. I know Tony talked about being such a strong believer in college, and I don't disagree with him for his reasons. But then on the flip side of that, I look at what they're teaching in college, and I'm like, I don't want to send my kids to that, because I don't want them to learn all that bullshit that they're teaching now, but they have no right to teach.
Yeah.
All these things are putting these bad thoughts and feelings in people's minds. And maybe I should have been a girl. Maybe I should have been a boy. That shouldn't be a problem. And
Right.
that's where I think the younger generation is going to be fucked.
I agree.
And when the previous government allowed it, and the schools allowed it, and all these different things are going on, that's a big problem, because they make it feel like it's okay. And when you talk about somebody that's probably already got a little bit of doubt in their mind or insecurities in their mind, then you throw all this out there, and then you have all that added insecurities in your mind. It's just not right. And we've allowed it to happen, and I hope to God if we can change it.
I gotta tell you guys a quick story based on what you're saying. When my son was younger, he was playing basketball, and I was sitting down with the coach's daughter on the side while they were practicing. And the coach's daughter, I think, was my son's age at the time, maybe 12 to 13 years old. They were in middle school. Yeah, middle school. And we're sitting down, and this kid walks by with a posse of other 2 or 3 kids. And they're all the same age, about 13 years old, walks by us. And she goes, "You see that kid?" I go, "Yeah." And he was a good looking kid, good young kid, looked like he was popular, right? She goes, "He told everybody he's gay, even though he's not. And now he's got 10 times more friends than he had before." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "He's not gay. He's just telling people that he's gay because socially acceptable. He's going to get way more friends and more followers on his Snapchat and everything else by telling people that." And I was like, "God damn, man. That just blew me away. That's crazy."
The girls are more comfortable to be around them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Howard, what about yourself, buddy? Do you think we have such an attack going on right now?
So Jay had called B-level people something. I forget what the word was that he used, but when those people became the prominent voice in our media, that's when the war on masculinity started. Because the alpha, the leader, the go-getter, the driven person was, I don't want to have to work as hard as that guy. I just want to beat that guy down so that I could just be mediocre, take my participation trophy and say that's good enough. Right. So it was bad to want to be driven, to be focused, to be a leader and challenge the status quo. And it was the shift in media, I think, that brought the toxic masculinity term even to popularity. Right. Because you see all these things, and somebody else said it, I don't envy kids today because of social media and the things that it creates. But you see all these videos on social media about how women can do this and you can do that and you can do anything you want to do, but you just have to be nice about it. No, you can't win anything being nice about it or laying back and hoping it happens. You have to get up every morning and go. And we've become a lazy world that doesn't want to put that effort in, and they want to see it happen through the accumulation of participation trophies. If you're willing to be that alpha that's going to go out and do, you're bad because you're not fitting in with the blended herd of sheep. You're being the lion, right? And they don't like that. So it's easier to attack it and make it look bad than it is to embrace the fact that might be the next leader of our country.
That's right.
Yeah. So next question is, what do men these days? So I'm a little bit younger than you guys, but I'm going to say our generation growing up, what do we have then that boys today don't have? And vice versa. What didn't we have? We didn't have social media, things like that.
Thank
What are
God.
the differences between these two generations that you see? And how has that absence of things or presence of other things impacted them emotionally? And what will that mean moving forward? Gene, let's start with your opinion.
Well, the absence of fathers in homes, in my
Yes.
opinion, is the absolute
Nuclear family.
biggest issue that what we have. And I listen to Tony, I listen to all you guys talking. I like to think that I laid a good foundation for my son, but myself growing up, I never had that father figure in. So I didn't really learn any of this stuff until I got to the Marine Corps and I had father type figures around. But I think I had to say, if we corrected that one thing, put a focus on the family and having fathers in the house, obviously people did not like Charlie Kirk or he'd still be here. But what he was saying was 100% correct. There's a void of solid fathers in these families and a lack of focus, especially with this younger generation. Getting married and having kids in the family is just not as important for whatever reason now. And once we get back to that, I think a lot of this will straighten out. But I think conversations like this with those young men that don't have fathers is a big deal. And I think anybody that's not volunteering or what have you to these organizations where, whether it be a football team, but whatever, there's just a lack of fathers even with that. And we put I think what happens is we see too many of these fatherless boys in the school system getting indoctrinated with that bullshit that they're teaching now. So that is framing their mind. If that's all you hear as a young forming mind, what do you think is what it's supposed to be? That's why we need, and like this panel to really stand in the gap with that.
Yeah. Amen, man. And if you look at the devil's playbook, the enemy's playbook, one of their biggest enemies is the nuclear family. So if you can eradicate fathers from homes, dismantle nuclear families, you're going to increase dependency on government, on social media, on cabals, on whatever, however conspiratorial you want to get. But that's a rock hard truth. Absolutely. Is that dismantling the nuclear family, it leaves all that other space to usher in dependency on systems outside of yourself.
Well, why do you think they hated Charlie Kirk? Like you were saying with Charlie Kirk, look at even a guy like Harris Butker, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? He came out and he said, hey, our society needs more fathers and mothers together, mothers to be able to educate their kids and bring up a family. And right away, he was a male chauvinist pig. He was this, he was that, because he believed in faith and family. They prosecuted him. But yeah, let's say a guy like, what's his name? What's that guy that played Creed? The black kid that played Creed. He's got
Michael B. Jordan.
He's got 18 baby mamas, like 45 kids. And he's like this hero. Hollywood portrays him as a hero, that he's got all these children with all these women and he just pays them. And that's a hero. But somebody who comes out and says, hey, man, family's important, religion's important, faith, media prosecutes them. Yeah. I think everybody's on the same page here in this panel in regards to who the real fire starters are. It's the people who are paid the most to spread the word. So that's usually the media side.
Yeah. So as a reminder, the original topic we were talking, because we got that nuclear family tangent a little bit, but the difference between what our generations had growing up as men and what the boys of today are looking at and how that impacts them. So Jay, what are your thoughts?
I just think there is such an effort being made to just remove God from everything,
Amen. Yeah.
from school, from society. Like, I always had God in my life. I didn't always live my life in a way that reflected that. There was a period of time when I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't living by the principles that I was aware of. Only after I fully embraced God and turned my life over to him and elevated my faith and elevated my trust and said, you know what? I keep trying to figure things out myself and I keep getting it wrong. God, I'm just going to follow your plan and I'm going to trust that you got it right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's days when I don't understand it and I can't hear the words that he's sending to me. Just try to stay on that line. And I'm like, I'm going to do what I think God wants me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm getting it wrong, he's going to self-correct for me.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to put me back in line. But I think this massive effort to just remove God from everybody's life is really, it's terrible.
Yeah. And obvious. Thanks, Jay. Sam, what are your thoughts, man?
I think that years ago in our childhood time frame, there was one direction and everybody was focused on that one direction. Whether you went to school and you got in trouble, the principal spanked you, you came home. I remember I got spanked at home, I got spanked at school. They weren't scared to touch you, they weren't scared to correct you. But it was one focus, it was one goal and one direction. And now it's just so scattered that I think there's just a lot of confusion. And I hate to go into politics, so I don't want to go into politics, but the right and the left was not so far apart. You know, and it was good. It was good to have a right and a left because you might feel this way at times, you might feel, but at the end of the day, they weren't so far apart. Now it's gone so far apart that I feel it's the same way in the world. So now kids are getting pulled every which way in every direction. And I think when we were younger, there wasn't that. It was just one goal, one focus. Whether you were, at school or at home or at work or playing with the kids, there wasn't such a diversity of thoughts and ideas and ways of life, I guess you could say. So I think that's really the big difference from what we had back then.
Yeah,
That's great.
100%.
Insight. Tony, what do you think?
I just think a lot of things I've already said, but different decorum, different world. Notice with my children, like an inability to pay attention for longer than 7 to 10 seconds because of YouTube shorts. Like they can't sit and watch a movie.
Yes.
Like they,
I know,
like they have to do multiple things. The ability to not be pulled in, when I was growing up, we were addicted to MTV and all that as well. I mean, we had our lives,
Right.
but we were much more curious. My boys and their friends, and they don't understand how to talk to women, as in socially function. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, I was already all about girls, and I was super interested in, you'd figure out how to write them something or talk to them. That's not a thing. And it's a very awkward generation. And it's a generation that has been homogenized into thinking really certainly a same, everybody thinks the same way, where we had these groups of kids that were acted certain ways in different groups. And I don't know, it's a very well-informed generation, and there's a lot out there for them that I think is super cool. I think we tend to want to shit on everything that goes on in today's world, but I mean, never have we been probably have ability to be super healthy in our lives and the information that we can glean whenever we want to. There's a lot of cool shit that I wouldn't want to go back 30 years to try and do life that way, but we've also lost a lot of innocence and the ability to be analog versus digital. It'd be good to live in a world of analog for quite some time. So that's the major difference that I see that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Imagining how much good.
I mean, the information is at their fingertips. We never had that information. Now they can see, learn, find out, research everything in seconds.
Totally.
For us, you had to ask buddy what you thought, it was unreal.
Yeah, we were much more innocent, man. And this is a funny story, but if you'd go try and sneak a Playboy somewhere, go into your
great man.
To go look
Great
at
example,
magazine,
brother. Great example.
Right?
I mean, just that all the time.
Or your friends would bring one to school and it was contraband, man. But now it's just holy shit, the stuff that you can see.
Oh no, it's so extreme. The shit that these kids have visuals to is so freaking extreme. And I think that's one of the reasons why they don't know how to talk to a woman or treat a woman, because they see the extreme of the extreme. What was our biggest thing? Three's Company when Jack goes to kiss a girl and then they go into a commercial. Now, dude, you put on like Nickelodeon, bro, and you got two girls making out or two boys making out. And I'm going like, these are kid shows.
There was one thing that really hit home and bothered me, which is my kids came home, talking about Charlie Kirk, and my youngest, who's 13, said, "Dad, did you see that guy today get shot?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, yeah, that shot in front of people at school. And I was like, "You saw that?" And he's like,
saw that?
"Yeah." And I'm like, "Where in all of God's name did you see that?" He goes, "Oh, like everybody at school had that queued up. Like we saw that right away." And I had seen that on the internet. And I was like, after all the shit I've seen in my life, that was troubling to watch. That was brutal. And I told my son, like, you literally watched a guy die. That was real. That wasn't fake. That's not a video game.
Right.
And that's just stuff that we didn't have in our lifetime.
No.
Yeah. Howard, what are your thoughts?
It's everything everybody has said, right? We grew up self-sufficient, take care of it, get it done. Generation now has been coddled and babied and handed. This thing is destroying their brains.
Yep.
They don't have to think for themselves. They don't have to go out and experience. They don't have to leave the house to have experiences, because they can watch somebody else that went and did it and say, "Oh, I know what it's like to ride a motorcycle. Oh, I know what it's like to climb a mountain because I saw a video on that." You don't know, right? Just like they don't know what it's like to get punched in the face because they hide behind this keyboard and say whatever they want to someone that they would not dare say to their face, where we only had the opportunity to say it to someone's face, and there was a potential repercussion from what you said. So you said it knowing what could happen. Now they type and then they hide and they create a new profile and disappear the old one to become a new person because they realize what they said probably would get them beat up. So they move on to a new personality.
Yep. Tony, was there a moment that you truly scared yourself in your life where you were going through some crazy shit? I know you mentioned that, like, you were on this rambunctious thing, you were drinking, you were partying with the boys, all that stuff. But was there a true moment where it tested you?
Once. And that was, just pretty dark period. And I do remember I just couldn't sleep for weeks. And I mean, literally I was getting less than an hour of sleep at night. I'd fall asleep and, anxiety would jolt me awake and truly struggling. And I never was suicidal or thinking to myself after months of not sleeping. I told myself, man, if I'm still like this in 6 months, if I still feel this way, I can easily see how somebody would kill themselves. And that would probably be an entertaining option if I can't get myself help. And thank God I had close enough friends that I could talk to about it that got me pointed in the right direction to the right people. And I came right out of it. And that's been time in my life where I was struggling, serious outside influence to help me. It was a period of about 4 to 5 months total. And then it was gone.
Gene, what about yourself, man? You ever have that moment where you scared yourself with the mindset?
I don't know if it's where it scared me, but when men and women are way different. Men, we show our affection by providing. That's how we provide, and women are completely different. But when I found out my son was an addict, I pride myself in being a great father. So I'm thinking, how did I miss this? He was bad. Yeah. He was a bad addict. He was a high function addict. He was bad. And as we really got into it, and he was open up about it. And anyway, it was just probably one of the lowest points in my life, realizing that I have failed him as a father to let him get to this point, that I wasn't there where he could open up and talk to me. And that was probably one of the lowest points in my life, is whenever I found out, and working through that with him, because he'd have been around addiction, knows it's not the switch cuts off deal. It's definitely a process. He's been clean for 7 years now, but I mean, hell, for half of it, it's just been a struggle, honestly.
And as a father, you blame yourself. So that's even harder because you're taking upon anything that happens to your kids as you're doing.
Right.
That sucks, man.
Well,
That's a tough one.
here's the difference in our mentality, and you guys talk about the newer technology and stuff. So my question to him was, I need to know who you got this from. As he's telling me, they were going to the dark web and ordering it, and it was being delivered to my house in a game box.
Gosh.
In a game box.
And that little game. So I'm thinking he's just ordering Call
Video
of Duty,
games, yeah.
and it was not Call of Duty. So for anybody listening,
Anything
to this,
could have been in that.
anything.
He's lucky to be alive.
Yeah. So anyway, that's that was the hardest point in my life, honestly.
Jay, what about you, man? I know you've had a lot, you wrote a lot about in your books. What was that moment where you scared yourself that you thought this could be it?
There was a point in time where like I had an honest, transparent look at myself, and I realized that I had crashed my family. I had destroyed everything that I thought was important to me, everything that I thought that I stood for, and I was going to end it. And I was right there. And my cell phone rang, and I saw my wife's name on the caller ID, and I was trying to decide if I was going to answer the call or not. And I decided to pick the call up only because I wanted to leave her with something kind. I wanted her last contact with me to be something that she could reflect on that was kind from me. Like, I wasn't interested in eliminating myself. I was interested in eliminating the source of all the problems in the people's lives that I cared about, which I was the common denominator. I was the source of that. And I picked up the phone, and like I said, all I wanted to do was say something kind to be my last words. And it was my wife and my kids were on the phone, and they were like, "Where are you? We love you. We want you to come home."
Man.
And that, when I talk about like having heroes in my life, my story's got heroes in it. I'm not one of them. The people that cared about me the most, that loved me the most, that were the most loyal to me, were the ones that I treated the shittiest. I took them for granted. And I realized maybe in that moment, like how shameful that was to take that care and concern for me and disregard it and put myself in front of them.
Crazy, man. Sam, I know life is a little bit different compared to, I'm in the same boat compared to what Tony and Jay and Gene go through. But we all obviously have dark days, things that we go through. What was one of yours that really tested you, that even scared you a little bit?
It's nothing that compares to what Jay just and I were talking about.
Tough act to follow.
I'm so happy you're still here today. I'm so happy you made it through that time.
Absolutely, brother.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've never been to that point in my life. The hardest thing I've been through, which we all went through, it's nothing specific to me, but the recession that we went through was a time in my life where really tested the ability to keep on moving along and get through it. It was a time when I was 2 dealerships into being in the business and just on my way growing, and then the brakes hit, and then I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay my staff and put food on the table for my employees and not lay people off and keep the doors open and all those things. It was the toughest time of my life as far as experience. But that was business related. That's different from what Jay's talking about. It's totally different. I don't compare it or even consider it anything near that level. But it just goes back to whatever the problems are, being able to, the glass is half full, not half empty type thing, always push along, always remember that, just like the Jay situation. There were people out there that loved him that he doesn't remember at that point in time. He didn't remember that they loved him as much as they did, no matter how bad things were. That's a time in your life where, drinking and gambling and drugs and all that stuff starts setting in because you feel that's going to help make things feel better. And it's the thing that I always say, it feels better tonight, but it's going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah,
you might have pushed a little bit of pain relief on it, like Advil when you got a backache, but that backache's going to be back in the morning.
Did anybody turn into any? I know that Tony said that he started drinking. Even though he's not a drinker, he was drinking more. Did you guys go into any kind of whatever it was, whether like you were saying, like gambling or infidelity or drugs or alcohol? Did anybody turn to shit like that and to numb that actual pain?
In my situation, I'll make it quick. I'm 52 years old. I've never even smoked a cigarette, let alone drugs. Occasional drinker, and that's it. I've never really got into that. And I don't really have an addictive personality either. So normally I'm pretty good about shutting something off if I don't like it or shouldn't be doing it. But I never really got into that.
How about you guys?
So, guys, I'm sorry. I got to jump in for a second. I've got some work stuff I've got to take care of, and I'm going to have to bail on you. But what I want to say is this last thing that can be part of what the rest of the conversation. There's nothing wrong with, as a man, being a man. No matter what society says right now, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with having a dark time. There's nothing wrong with having a light time. There's nothing wrong with talking to your friends about things. There's nothing wrong with talking to a professional. There's nothing wrong in doing what's going to be right to get you to where you need to get to. And hopefully, in what everybody's getting out of this, with all the things we've talked about, the bottom line is it's okay to not be okay and figure out a way to get to being okay. And I work at SNS, and if anybody ever wants to contact me and talk without 9 other people around, you're not going to get hugs and that, but you're going to get solid advice of, let me hear what's going on, and here's what I would do in that situation. Modify that to how you want it to be. And guys, I really appreciate the time with all of you. It was a great
Thanks, buddy.
couple of hours, but I was away for 8.5 days. And
Yeah, we know.
Well,
Thanks for making it.
This-
Howard was in Japan, so thanks, brother. Thanks for
this thing won't stop while I have
Thank
the
you.
rest of the thing blocked. So
Yeah. We
guys,
appreciate you, Howard.
really
Thanks,
take
buddy.
care. See everybody. I got to
Take care.
bail.
Good
Parting
All right.
words.
Thank you.
Thanks, bud. See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know in my dark time, I'm like you, Sam. I don't have a addictive personality, thank God, because I grew up around a lot of freaking drugs in my neighborhood, and it was in my face 24/7. Thankfully, smoked some weed, beers. That was really the heavy extent of my partying. But I know that in my dark times, man, I just remember a lot of, like I said, I think some of my darkest times were once I was divorced and now on my own and drinking a lot, being on the motorcycle, going out with the wrong crowd that's constantly just riding bar to bar, drinking. We went to Fort Lauderdale to a motorcycle show. And from Fort Lauderdale to Stewart, I think we hit every single bar on the way back. I don't even remember half the freaking trip. And here I am on the bike. And I still remember this vividly, that I'm riding and I'm going right into the median that separates US Swan. And at the last freaking second, I woke up and just swerved out, man. And that night right there was the last time I drank on the bike. That was, for me, my kick in the nuts, as you say, to wake you up and get out of that thing. And then it was the same thing. I went, signed up. I went and looked at my insurance plan. I could see a shrink. I went to talk to somebody, and I think she truly saved my life at that point, because I was nosediving. And that wasn't me normally. And it was just excuses, blaming the world and never taking responsibility at that time. So that was a hell of a life lesson that I learned for sure. And that had to do with alcohol. That was my break for sure.
I think you guys could agree. I don't think it's just me, but when you get around a group of guys and you hear they're not necessarily like the one upper, but there's always the conversation of if it's drugs or alcohol, and it's talking, it's borderline glorifying it. Oh yeah, I did this or did that. And a lot of times as men, we don't follow that up with the, here's how I pulled myself out of it. Here's how I moved on from that. Here's how I evolved or grew. So not only do I want you guys to consider what got you guys out of that funk and out of that off the edge, whether it be family, faith, whatever it is, the support systems that got you guys back on the right path. If you could look a man in the eyes who's on the edge right now, what would you tell him that maybe no one told you? And Tony, we'll start with you, brother.
The good news is that culture is swiftly changing. Talk to your friends. I've always said this as what experience got better. It sounds like Jay had this as well. As I was fortunate enough to, start the company Garage Composite, and I had an exit that I could take instead of continuing to do the same thing. And so I retired relatively early from the fire department. I walked away when I simply had enough, when I decided that my my wife and kids were way more important than complete strangers that I was servicing on a fire truck. So I walked away early, and that would be my message: is not only go get help from people that are professionals, but if what you're doing is thoroughly making you this unhappy, there's just other things to go do. Whether that's you own motorcycle dealerships, or you're working for consulting companies, or working in law enforcement, or whatever that might be, there's always something else that you can go do that's much healthier. And if you have the opportunity to take and it makes you feel better and it's something that's more healthy for you, take it and go and do something different, because I found that I became a lot happier.
It's awesome.
Great advice.
Great advice, brother.
Yeah. Thank you. Sam, what do you got?
I think always reaching out for help and support. We're back to those 4 orders. I think if you surround yourself with people that you can depend on, that you can count on, that are going to be there for you no matter what it is, good times and bad, and that's who's going to know you the best and probably help guide you the best. The one thing I've learned in life is I don't need the friends that have a whole lot of money. I don't care if you're rich. I don't care what your lifestyle is. I care about what kind of person you are. One of my best friends is a firefighter. And, it's just that through life, you figure out who's real and who's not. And if you surround yourself with those people, they're always going to be there for you when you need them. And you won't be embarrassed or, feel ashamed to call them at a time that you need it, whether it's 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever the case might be. I think that's huge to have in your back pocket. You should always figure out who those people are and have them. And the other thing goes back to what you said, Tony, is do what makes you happy. You have to wake up happy every day because life's stressful. And what we deal with day in and day out is not easy, from the family life to the work life to everything in between. It's tough. So if you're not happy with what you're doing, you're already waking up in the negative. You're already waking up with an uphill battle to face. And I think that's key. And then when you start dissecting what makes you happy and what doesn't make you happy in your life, you got to start removing those negative things that aren't working for you. It might be your relationship. It might be your girlfriend's boyfriend, or whatever it might be. But you have to clean that up so you can go forward. Because that's an anchor that you're always dragging behind you no matter what. And that's not what you need if you're in a funk. You have to get out of the funk. Well, that's the way to get started, is start eliminating those problems.
Awesome.
Yeah. Jay, what do you got?
It's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to not have a perfectly clear plan for your path and to be struggling through trying to figure out whatever that is. No one has it all figured out. And the guy who portrays himself as having it all figured out, trust me, that dude's dangerous. Yeah. That cat's dangerous, man. The guy that thinks he's got it all figured out and knows it all and is the smartest guy in the room, that cat's dangerous.
Probably in his 20s.
Yeah, right.
Right on. Thanks, Jay. Gene, what do you have? Words of wisdom.
God has been much more faithful to me than I have been to him. And I can tell you, as I go through life and I think back we all have ups and downs. Every down I have, it's funny, I always go back to that foundational of truth that God's always there for you. So I'll get back to my faith. And just thinking through that, as soon as things get better, what happens? We end up going the other way. And for me, faith is a very important thing to me. And I need to do better about staying in it all the time. But that's always what's gotten me through any of the hard times.
That's awesome. Ben, what about you?
I think I'd tell them to find their why. If I'm looking at a guy who's on the edge, first off, I'd tell him that he's loved and that he has value, even if he doesn't feel like anybody in the world portrays that to him. If you believe in a higher power, you are loved by that higher power. And for what I believe and base my life off of, that's unconditionally. And I have absolutely had moments where God has been more faithful than I have, just like Gene. And I think that it's a different message for different people. But if you're looking at a father, like, what about your kids? Just thinking about life outside of yourself and the impact that you can have, and to eradicate the planet of yourself a little early, you're missing out on all of that impact that you could have. And I think just if you can shake that worth and value, every single hair on your head is known and loved. And if you can shake that into a man and help him realize that, it can get him past anything and help him run through a wall. There are 40,000 suicides a year that they don't have to happen. And I think it stems from men feeling like they're alone.
Yeah, no question.
I'm
No
more concerned
question.
about what you said every hair on your head, your love. There's four of us here that aren't doing so well then.
on
It
your
fell
face.
here. I got a little bit here.
You all have hair on your face. I should have said head and
Yeah.
face included.
That's so funny. That's great.
Oh, Sam.
Hey guys, you know what too? Everything that all of you said is so spot on. And I think one of the most things, and I've been in a struggle over, have a startup business. I left and basically switched my career that I had for 22 years. And now I'm building this other career still in the same industry, right? And trying to manage multiple jobs to take care of bills and just being like getting up at 6, putting my resting my head on the pillow at 1:30. And I get to a point where I feel cooked sometimes because I understand that the grind will be worth it because I'm doing it the right way. But I think one of the most important things that we forget to do or tell people to do who are struggling or go outside, go in nature, man.
Touch grass.
Touch
There's a reason
grass,
that's saying
smell
that.
it. Dude, I'm
Absolutely.
so fortunate. I live on 5 acres out here in Palm City in the farmlands, man. And I can and every morning I get up when I can and I just take a walk and I breathe the air. And I can't believe how much that helps me because I don't sleep well. I haven't slept well in a while. I'm trying my best because I go to bed in my head. I'm already planning everything else. I'm sure like most of you guys do, business owners, stress, travel. Jay's got all his stuff going on. So everybody's got their things that they fight. But I really believe that a lot of people just need to go outside, man, smell the fresh air and just walk, be in nature. Just get away, shut the phone off, shut the television off and just breathe some air. And that is so goddamn, I don't know, it's just therapeutic. All right, guys, we're gonna end the show here. We're gonna just ask one last question. It's a simple one answer, man. You ring it the way you want to do it. We'll start with Gene. We'll start up top with Gene. Gene, what keeps you fighting?
That's actually a very good question. Every day, my goal is to do something for somebody, make a difference in somebody's life. So what keeps me going day to day is just that. I've said this before. I stopped working for money years ago. Now it's just, hey, what can I do to make a difference? And I can tell you at the end of the day, when it's all said and done for my life, I don't want anybody to say, I was a great car guy, great motorcycle. I want to say, you know what? That cat made a difference in people's lives. To me, that's what's most important. That's what I'll put on the tombstone. If they can't put that, then I have failed what God gave me in a life.
Jay, what keeps you fighting?
It's very easy for me to forgive people. It's like I forgive really fast, but I struggle to forgive myself.
Sure.
And I think that's important. I think that we have to work at forgiving ourselves for the things that we feel guilty or regretful about or shameful about. And the way I've tried to do that, it dovetails with what Gene is saying, is I wake up every day and I go to bed every night being thankful and grateful for my life and for my problems. I don't have to look far to find someone who's got it much worse than I do, who would love to trade their life for mine, regardless of how struggled I might be at any given time. I think it's really important that we work on forgiveness is important, but we have to forgive ourselves as well.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Tone, what keeps you fighting, buddy?
Man, that's just what I do. That's what makes me happy. I'm up every morning and get after it. And whether that's trying to keep myself as physically healthy as possible, fighting to be the best dad that I can be the best husband that I can be, keep doing really good in business, keep traveling the world and growing my brain and learning. So it's just how I'm wired, and it really is what makes me happy.
Awesome.
Mm.
Sam, what about yourself? What keeps you fighting every day?
Yeah, very similar to what Tony said. I mean, I'm super, super competitive. It's not about money. It's not about finances. It's nothing like that. It's always, you want to be number one. You want to be the best at whatever it is you do. And it's just a competitive thing. So I wake up every day wanting to be that person, whether it's home life, whether it's wife, kids, work, friendship. It doesn't matter what it is. I just always want to be the best and I'm my worst critic. So no matter how good everyone else might say, oh, you're the best. So I'm still not the best. And that's just the way I'm programmed. It's probably a bad thing. And it probably reflects on how I handle situations as well, whether it's my kids or employees, whatever. I don't pat them on the back enough. because I expect more always. And that's a bad thing because I treat myself that way, which is okay. But then sometimes I treat others that way. I want more out of them and I expect more out of them. But that's what motivates me. What motivates me is just to wake up every day and there's never a minute left untouched in my life. I'm always on the go. I'm always trying to accomplish more than you can in a 24-hour time period. And that's just the way my life is. I'm setting so realistic so quick, but you still want to accomplish them. Yeah.
For sure. You said that you're your own worst critic. Do you guys think that's just how we grew up? That we are all very hard on ourselves? Do you think that's part of the generation, or is that just our upbringing, or is the youth today? Do you think that they're hard on themselves?
In my situation, no. I don't think it's our generation because not everybody that I hang out with that's my age is like that.
Right.
It's not my upbringing because my parents weren't like that to me. So for whatever reason, I created it in my own world, in my own head to be that way. It's probably not the best way to be in a lot of ways because you've got to be mentally strong to be able to handle being that hard on yourself. But I don't think it's a generation thing. I do think we've got much better work ethics and all those things we discussed, but I don't think that everybody is wired that way. I think certain people are happy with where they are and they're content, which is great. And I think when people can't be content, which I'm probably that person, it's probably bad. It really is. Because you always want more of it. You're great where you're at. There's nothing wrong with where you're at, but you always want more. And again, I'm not
Of course.
on goals. If I go mountain biking and I ride 20 miles today, my goal is 22 miles tomorrow. Why? I have no idea why. But that's just the way I'm programmed.
Why? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Jay said something at the beginning, actually, to that point. It's okay being average. There's a use for average people. And I don't think that it's a generational thing. I think it's just a man thing or woman thing. It's just, some of us just wired. I'm that way. When I say I don't work for money, I work for wins. I work to be the best there is out there. And for me, that's just what drives me. Is I want Sam to say, you know what, if you want to really make a difference in your business, call that cat right there. He's the one. And I said this morning, if business wise, I never want anybody to say, you know what, he's really a good guy. To me, I have failed if somebody says that about me. I want them to say that cat makes a difference and can help you drive business life or whatever it is.
And that's amazing. And this is what's beautiful about this conversation. I know it's the first time we've ever done anything like this. We really don't have a script for it. We try to follow questions. Everybody talks in general, but what Ben and I were working on was just, we've all become friends through the podcast, and now it's been more and more, but it's been great to be able to hear, because every single one of you guys are people that both Ben and I look up to, not only in what you do, but just the type of men you guys are. So for you to take the time out of your busy schedules and the lives that you guys live, come on our show and open up, man. I just want to say honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, man. We love you guys very much. We honored to have crossed paths with you and to actually call you guys our friends. To me, it's to have all you guys' cell phone number on my phone. I can just say, reach out anytime I want. That to me is just priceless. You're an influence to many. I'm sure your families and your kids look up to you, but people around you guys just have that thing about you for you to open up like that for us. Seriously, thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas. Appreciate you guys.
Definitely. It's been a pleasure. I do want to say, if you're a listener or a viewer right now, you've made it through the episode and it's made a difference for you, it could mean the world if you shared it with somebody else that needs the encouragement and needs to understand that they're not alone, or even just that to feel seen can make a huge difference for so many men. So I would beg you guys to send this to people who could use it. Again, thank you guys so much for spending time with us today. It's meant a whole lot to us.
Merry Christmas to you all. Great New Year. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.